Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our virtual brown bag session today. Our session is on diversity in the workplace and why is it important for you to know and understand about diversity, equity, and inclusion in your workplace. We know as students here at UTA that most of you are thinking, I got to go out and get my job, right? So we wanted to host this activity for you today to think about your potential job from the standpoint of being a collaborative partner and teammate and celebrating and working with the diverse peoples that you'll interact with. We have two panelists with us today. We have Bridget Reeves, who is the U.S. Culture and Diversity Engagement Lead for Tata Consultancy Services. And we have Brenda Williams, who's the University Relations Manager at INROADS. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their company, as well as what they do within their company, so that you have some context as we start talking today. I'm going to go ahead and ask Brenda to start us off, introduce herself a little bit, and then we'll go to Bridget.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. So as you mentioned, I am I'm actually the lead university relations manager with INROADS. I am responsible for going out and finding awesome students for internship opportunities with our over 200 corporate partners across the U.S. A little bit of my background is I have an accounting degree. I did accounting for a little while, and then I transferred over into the technical side and did technical consulting for several years. So I was able to combine my accounting degree with the technical side and still create a career. And then I became a trainer, which involved both of those things. And so all of that led me to today, really finding my passion of recruiting and working with students and being hands-on. So it gives me a little bit of instant gratification to see them, meet them where they are, watch them grow and become awesome professionals and giving and leaving an impact in corporate America.
Thank you so much. And Bridget, tell us a little bit about your company and yourself.
All right, well, let's see. My name's Bridget Reeves, as mentioned. So I'm the U.S. Cultural Diversity Engagement Lead. I'm still trying to get used to the title myself. I'm actually in Phoenix, Arizona. Let's see. It's funny, my journey has been a little different. So funny, my bachelor's and master's is in home economics and business. So I accidentally got into MIS, accidentally got into human resources, pretty much been in IT customer service, worked at a law firm for a period. So with Tata Consultancy Services, I've been with going on 15 years, actually. So actually the role that I'm in, which is regarding the diversity, inclusion, and equity. I stepped in last June. So prior to that, I was a senior leader in human resources for Tata for a region. So anyway, so pretty much I'm very happy to be in this role. I was glad to be asked because, to be honest, is that we as an organization, even though, well, let me tell you a little bit about our organization. So we are we're under the Tata umbrella. Some people don't know how big it is. It's probably big as GE, General Electric. It's an over 100-year-old company that's based out of India. They have 100 companies underneath. One of their 100 is Tata Consultancy Service, which we are the third world's largest global IT company in the world. We have over 500,000 employees across the globe. We're happy to say that we have about 36% of our employees are women. We have a significant percentage of employees that are Gen Y. And then, of course, we have about 161 nationalities, I think, also globally. But pretty much what we're just trying to focus on within Tata Consultancy Service, because the U.S. is the largest location, I should say, for the 500,000 employees across the globe. We have 40,000 employees in the U.S. We're trying to build up, of course, our diversity, equity, inclusion, not only globally, but of course in the U.S. and provide a sense of community and safety for our employees. And of course, also help with mentoring and coaching and professional development. So I think that's it hopefully in a nutshell.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we had sent you a set of questions, and as was mentioned earlier, participants, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and we will have our panelists discuss them. We'll get started with the ones we have, but we really want to hear from you. So don't forget to share your questions with us. So I'm going to ask the question, then I'll have each of you respond to it. And again, add anything you feel is germane to this particular question. So our first question is, please share what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you and why they are important. I'm going to actually get Bridget to start since she has that in her title, and then we'll go to Brenda. So Bridget, why is diversity, equity, and inclusion, what does it mean to you and why is it important?
Well, basically, I think I've been always a person regarding, and probably reflects a little bit off of Dr. Martin Luther King's, is regarding character. I've been fortunate being raised with my parents where they made sure I was trying to be in environments where not only to prepare me for what the workforce is, but also just focusing on what a person's character is. And I've been very fortunate regarding that. So regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, and also I know, like, for example, our organization is branching into equality and branching into justice, by the way. So we're actually heading into add those acronyms into it. But for us, we just want to embrace where people can understand that where people are just that are different, basically. Also, we want to focus on helping employees acknowledge equity. And that also not only us as an employer regarding that, hey, we support regarding equity, equality as well, but also we want to encourage them. Like, for example, we have what's called a Champions of Equity program, and it started with our CEO. And so it's basically taking a pledge. So we encourage all our employees to pick a pledge, add their verbiage to that, and then they post it on our intranet, showing what they stand for. So we're happy about that. And of course, inclusion, we just want to have communities and people to feel included. And then that also that what they are and what they brings not only value to their own professional development, but our organization. It increases our profits. It increases our sense of not only internal community, but external community. So pretty much just sum it up is our motto for our organization is inclusion without exception, to probably just end on that.
Thank you. All right, so Brenda, share with us what diversity, equity, and inclusion means to you and why they're important.
I believe I probably have very similar experiences to Bridget, with parents who are instilling character and making you ready for today's workforce, even though, I mean, we look young, but we probably have some decades behind us, right? So it becomes generational. And so I believe diversity is everywhere. It's the presence of different people in the room with different experiences, different perspectives, and different backgrounds that are able to sit at the table. And then the inclusion part is where everybody can participate, being asked, what's your voice? What do you have to offer to the situation? So it's one thing for corporate America to bring the diverse candidates in and fill that pipeline and have a diverse workplace to quote statistics and whether it's gender, ethnicity, disabilities, but it's even more important to feel included, being part of the solution. And to Bridget's point, it does increase the bottom line in profits. It does give you a wider talent pool, and it gives you access to different markets that you may not have been able to participate. And I think what we've seen in the last couple of years, to the situations that have occurred in what I'm calling a movement, where companies are filling it in the bottom line if they're not bringing a diverse group or consultant group to a situation or a service, they're not going to be able to participate. And so they could possibly be losing money across the board because they're not being able to approach it from a diverse perspective. And so it does widen what you get. It does bring all of the different thought processes in, but it does need to have some kind of, you need to manage that process as well. And so while it sounds great, it is actually hard to implement. Different corporate cultures are having to change their same old process to adapt to where we are today in 2022 and where we're going forward. So even the companies that have not joined the party, it is not too late. They are still coming to the table going, okay, we need to make a difference. And so I will leave with a quote of diversity is the seat at the table, inclusion's having a voice at the table, and the belonging part is having your voice heard. And so that's just what I'll leave you with there.
Now I'm trying to capture your quotes and you guys are so good. Okay. And Brenda, I'm going to make you quote again Bridget, I'm going to make you quote your motto again about inclusion because I was trying to capture it and I lost it. You said your corporate motto was inclusion something?
Yes, inclusion without exception.
Without exception, I loved that. That's
and
wonderful.
then we do have sort of a slight vision is our vision is we want people to feel comfortable bringing their authentic selves to work. So that's our vision as well.
Lovely. Okay. So thank you for that. And now I have our next question. Again, observers, I'm still waiting for questions, so feel free to share those in the Q&A. So our next question, what is the best and the most challenging thing about working in a diverse environment? So Brenda, I think I'll let you start this one. So what is the best thing and the most challenging thing about working in a diverse environment?
I'm actually going to say the best and the worst are actually the same thing. It's bringing those different viewpoints to the table. So that's the best thing, right? You can sit in a room and people come from, your thought processes come from your experiences and what you've been exposed to. And so there are forever learners in the room. There are people who are just taught one way and that's the only way. And then there are people who have fresh and new ideas. All of those diversity of thoughts are the best thing because you probably come up with the most innovative solution at the end of the day. But then the worst thing, or the most challenging part, not the worst, but most challenging, is you have all of those different perspectives at the table. And what do you do and who's to manage that process? And sometimes it makes certain people in the room feel uncomfortable about the different viewpoint or the different perspectives. And so I guess the beauty in that, the challenging part is to make everyone feel like even though your viewpoint may be different, your experience is different, what you're bringing to the table is different, but it's still acceptable. And to Bridget's point, bring your authentic self to the table and have that authentic voice, because if you don't, you're missing out. And I think we've had generations that used to be very similar, rigid, loyal, do the same thing. Everybody go along to get along, and very, I'm going to call it assimilation. And so now we're in the place where people can bring their authentic self to work, and we don't necessarily have to assimilate, but we can feel that our thoughts and our perspectives and our experiences to this point are valued. And being able to manage that in the workplace, I think, is probably the uncomfortable part. So it is your best thing, and I think it's your most challenging thing at the same time.
Very nice. Thank you. So Bridget, what would you say are the best thing and the most challenging thing about working in a diverse environment?
Well, of course, I mean, I agree with a lot of Brenda's comments. I think, let me go with the opposite here, going with challenges that, to be honest, like, for example, our organization is majority, pretty much started off in India. And yes, we have been, the U.S. has been, portion has been in the U.S. for about over 50 years. With that said, and is that, yes, we, for many years, had a majority of employees that happen to be expats from India. So, and being transparent, yes, our organization for the last 3 years has focused on D&I or D&I, I should say, but I will admit it's more of it was gender, to be honest. And so with George Floyd being transparent, when that happened, I'm probably telling too much about our business, but from a U.S. perspective, then it really put more energy. Not saying disability or race wasn't there, but it really fast forwarded or accelerated to really just embrace everything. So right now our challenge is, to be honest, is just we're unfortunately maybe a little bit behind, but our leaders are ahead. Our leaders are leading us in a sense regarding diversity, but we're still in the early stages, to be honest. So definitely that organizational psychology of change from the top and down. And so right now, to be honest, our employee population in the U.S. is about half and half local hires and half expats. So that's about 20,000. So we're in the middle of really shifting. We have a core, and it's actually enjoyable right now. I say for the last maybe 3 years, we are shifting, but we are starting to pick up kind of speed. So I say the challenge is we're still going through the change of having managers. I would say, and that's recruitment. To be honest, we're just starting to get tools for diversity recruitment. We're just starting to get our ERGs going. So I'm just being transparent. So that's the challenge, is just getting that movement, not just going, because we are going. The car is running. To be honest, we're probably haven't been traveling for a long time, but that's where we're at. As for the enjoyment is, I will admit, since I stepped into this role last June, I have just been in awe where the number of people from various departments are just stepping in like, hey, Bridget, I want to come on board, et cetera. So just all these people from different levels of departments are it was like almost like a breath of fresh air, and they're jumping in. They want to be partners and champions and everything. So just seeing people, whether not only professionally, but that deep inside, just kind of that light coming in, and they're like, oh, this is a community, this is engagement, we'll be a part of the change. And then also we're allowing outlets for people to express themselves, and maybe not only express themselves for who they are, what they make up from, but unfortunately, not unfortunately, because we were, unfortunately, it was the Michelle Go, that situation happened. So then opening that other chapter where people can express where they experience, unfortunately, hate. And so now we're exploring regarding safety as well. We've always had the safety, but we're actually wanting to allow a bigger room for that, for people to express that. So sorry that was long, but we're in just the evolution stage of it, to be honest.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Can I piggyback on what Bridget said about that this, what we're going through right now, the evolution of it is not a sprint, right? It is a marathon and just getting started. So I applaud your company for joining the race, to be on the track, to get the car running, right? To start moving. And so a lot of people thought it was just a moment in time, but it really is for the long term of the company. The existence is to be in the marathon of it all, to continue the race. And I think a lot of people, at the beginning because of George Floyd and what happened, people made statements. Companies were, I guess, I don't want to call it lip service, but kind of a lot of it was lip service, to just say, okay, we acknowledge that it happened. And then they went back to normal course of business. And then there are companies like Bridget's who stepped up to the table. No matter how long it took you to get there, you started the car. And so I applaud you for doing that, because some companies are just coming to that realization, that understanding it was not just a sprint. It's not a 100-yard dash. It really is a marathon with no particular end to it, but we hope one day this is not the conversation, that we're not talking about where we are in this process. Like, this will become a moot point. But we know how things are slow to change. And so I just wanted to say, just remember that this is a marathon. It's not a one-time stop. It is ever evolving. So.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Thank you. So we do have a comment. We do have a question. I'm going to ask you one more question before, because I think it'll give context for the question that we have. So I'm going to ask you briefly, and I think maybe Bridget's already done most of this, but the question is, share about yourself and the diversity of your company and DEI related goals. So Bridget, if you wanted to think about it, if there's any more details you wanted to share, I don't know if your company has set goals or not. Probably not. I know we haven't really set explicit goals. We're still working on it too. And then Brenda, the same thing. So a little bit more about your company, current diversity, and your current DEI goals, and then we'll get to our question from our audience. So Brenda, would you go first?
Sure. So INROADS has been around for over 50 years, actually. Started in 1970. It started with one man's dream to change access to corporate America, and he wanted to give, at the time, the term was minority students, access to corporate America. And so I benefited from this organization. I'm an INROADS alumni. I was able to receive an internship that I had the entire time I was in college. And then the majority of our internships do convert. We have an 83% conversion rate of students who do the internship with the support that is provided by INROADS convert to the full-time job. And so that's kind of what INROADS does in a nutshell. By default, the nature of what we do as an organization is to really help the diverse students. So we really focus on African American, Native American, and the Latino community to give access into corporate America, because it's still a little different. A lot of companies still recruit from where they've always recruited, which may be the C-suite schools or the upper management, the executive leadership team schools. And they don't ever really change that dynamic because they believe we're getting the best talent. I came from there. That's where we should go to get more people that look like me. Well, that's counterintuitive to what diversity is, right? So INROADS kind of steps in to help bridge that gap. And so again, we've been around about 50 years. The support we provide is to help the student get ready for the interview, prep them, and then when they receive the internship, have that support in someone who becomes a coach and mentor. And then they get to grow their network. And so what I call it is a built-in support system. So by the nature of what we do as an organization, diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded in pretty much everything we do. Now, we did just begin earlier this year, and early, it's April. Now I'm saying early, the first quarter of this year, or the end part of last year, started Diversity Council. And so we do have a name. I think it's called INROADS United. I think that's what it's called. That's shame on me because I'm part of the committee. I should know what the name is. And so we're just kind of getting started to internally have that group. So for us, the majority of our organization, we probably are extremely diverse across the board, even with gender, ethnicity, probably a little more on diverse people, diverse backgrounds in the positions. Because that's who we're going after. And so those type of things do exist. And so we're a little different than all the other companies because we partner with over 200 companies across the US. And so we're talking to them, making sure we understand what their needs are so we can find the best fit in the student for them. So every day I wake up is diversity, equity, and inclusion. For me, that's my thought process. I like this field. I like talking about it. And so it's everything we do. So no matter what student groups I may be talking to or career services, it's really to get everybody to see how diversity, equity, and inclusion, it plays a part in your day-to-day process and how you can gain so much more from that. So whether I'm convincing a school career services to come on board or a multicultural services division or whoever is running DE&I at that establishment, I'm saying the same story. And then again with the students. And so it may not be so in your face of you've got to do these things, but it really is, we're trying to create a level playing field to give access to corporate America. So the student doesn't have to feel like I'm the only one, right? But we want to expound on what the only one really is. The only one could be, I could be the only female in the room. I could be the only one in the room that likes comedy versus everybody else in the room likes murder mysteries. I mean, those type of things, being the only one can be expanded. So it does not have to be gender-based, does not have to be about your ethnicity. You could be the only one that had that particular experience, or everybody else in the room had an experience and you didn't. So just really trying to get them to bring their authentic self to the place of employment, get as much as they can out of the internship. And I really help the students understand how to ask questions, even in an interview setting. If diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to you, here's some things you may want to look at when you're doing your research for that company. One of the things I often bring to the table is look at CEO in Action. Is a website where, similar to what Bridget talked about her company, where they have a pledge. This pledge was started out by a company CEO of Price Waterhouse. He called all the other big fours and said, hey, we need to do this together. It's not just about us and what we do. Let's take the competition out of it. Let's really make a thing. And so when it started, there may have been maybe 100 CEOs on there. Now the last time I heard a number, it was over 300, but I think it surpassed that as well. But CEO Action is a website where you can go and see which companies have actually taken the pledge. You can click on different buttons on there. There's a wealth of resources if diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to you. And you can see what companies are doing. If they're doing something on gender, they'll have that listed out there. Whatever initiatives, Bridget mentioned ERG groups or BRG groups, they'll have that listed out there. So they're showing the world what they're doing, the action behind the inclusion part is the action, right? They're showing the world what they're doing in the field of, so it's not just a moment, it really is a movement and part of the marathon. This is what we're doing as a company. So that website kind of holds some accountability. The CEO is signing the pledge and then he's moving it down, top down in the organization. And I know, and I think Bridget knows this as well, that's the only way to make something stick. It has to come from the top down. So everybody can be included in that process, but I kind of direct students to that when I'm explaining to them, here's how you do your research for an organization. Let's find questions that are important to you, but specifically, if this is an area that's important to you and you want to feel included, you belong, if it's equitable, what's going to happen in that particular situation, here's how you do some additional research. And most students are like, I've never heard of that. And most people I talk to have never heard of that. But even if I was interviewing, that's a question I would ask in the interview. Is your company part of this initiative? And were you in the process? If you're not part of the initiative, let's talk about that. So that's how kind of I bring it up in a conversation in an interview. But that's just one of the things that we do to help the students get ready for the interview, helping them get their questions together so they can be a more prepared student. We work in conjunction with career services. We are not trying to replace any career services, but we work in conjunction with. And so we do work with the career services, with the schools, the student organizations, and anybody. I've gone as far as a group of students. Are you guys friends? I will do the spiel for you. So anybody that will listen, I will share the story of INROADS and how we can best help you in your career search. And so that's kind of, I think I'm answering the question.
It's excellent.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Bridget, did you want to add a little more or add more about the diversity of your company and any DEI related goals that you guys currently have?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So, so pretty much Tata Consultancy Service, as I mentioned, we're the third world's largest global IT company. We're a consulting company, so pretty much all of our employees, well, we provide IT services to Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 organizations, and we believe in long-term relationships with our customers. Actually, our first customer, for example, is American Express. We've been with them for over 40 years, actually. So pretty much all of our employees are IT consultants, and they can perform various roles and depend on their career path and so forth. So we service our customers. So that's pretty much what we are pretty much. We also do have training programs too. I just want to highlight, we recruit from colleges. So we have like a 3 to 6 week training program for those are bachelor, masters, or even MBA. So we do bring, for example, we're actually recruiting for 3,000 trainees this coming year. Last year we had about 2,000. So we also do have a training program. I want to throw that out there. Pretty much our strategy for D&I, or our goals, is representation, enablement, engagement, ecosystem, and development. So representation, we just want to ensure that there's like all our diverse segments are represented within our organization. So it's not only our internal employees, but also the hires regarding roles, the different roles they provide, and even career progression. For an enablement, we want to ensure that there's basically systems and policies and infrastructure in place. For example, we have created what's called diversity maturity matrix. So we have already had meetings with not only the geography leadership, but also the business units like manufacturing, high tech, retail, et cetera. And we already shared with them where they stand regarding their diversity maturity. And then we have challenged them to identify a diversity officer, create a plan and some goals. So it helps, of course, helps you not only the business unit breaking it down, but it helps the whole organization hopefully move forward. And of course, our policies, we've readjusted some of our policies, whether it's paid parental leave, whether it's policies that support our LGBTQ plus benefits. Also, the next pillar we have in engagement. So regarding employee resource groups, we have about 10 already. And then also we do have type of engagements where we have Be Inspired series. We allow people to speak a platform. We love encouraging people. Here's a platform. Would you love to speak? We have what's called Dads That Do. We have She Says. You know, let's talk about this. Let's talk about hate. Let's talk about etc. So, or diversity library. Then we have ecosystem. So pretty much this is where we focus on education and sensitization regarding people. And so along with that, for example, we do have one of our marquee training sessions is called Grow Dive, which is basically focusing on diverse gender segments, gender, race, ethnicity, I can never say that word, LGBTQ plus, disability, age, and veterans. And then the last pillar we have is development. So that's basically, we have so much regard to mentoring, coaching. Also, we do have, we have a number of things, but one of the things too that extends outside, there's two things that extend outside. Is one is for, we do partner with our corporate social responsibility. So we have what's called TCS Empowers, where we do have a lot, we do connect. For example, we do celebration months. So right now we're celebrating International Neurodiversity Month. We completed International Women's Month, but also we'll partner with CSR and they help identify volunteer or nonprofit organizations that will fall in there. And then we try to encourage our employees so we can have diverse volunteers as well that can benefit the community. Also, we do have what's called Allies of Diversity, where we do have a platform where we invite other organizations to come to the table with our leaders to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion as well. And then probably just what basically well, I know I want to speak about that triggered what Brenda was saying. So regarding when we go and interview, at least when I go interview at campuses, I really like to asking these two particular questions, among other questions, is like, tell me about diversity. What does that mean to you? So I'm actually seeing where their mind is at, where their head is at. Also, along with that, the question may be more so like, tell me about your time when you worked in diverse teams. Actually, that's more of my question. Next time I think of it, I usually ask, and I kind of sit back and see where there's at, because our organization, one is teamwork. Our whole ecosystem pretty much is like teamwork, because we want our employees to feel comfortable not only working with diverse teams here locally, but also offshore or Australia and etc. So that's something I know I focus on asking, and then I like to ask them, how you tell me about your experience working with diverse teams. So it really depends on, so I can see where their mind is at. But probably one of the last things I want to say related to this is that I do have like a training program I created called What is Your Brand? So I love helping people, like, okay, when you think of Walmart and think of Target, why do you choose to go to Walmart? Why you don't go to Target? Why do you choose an Apple phone instead of an Android? My point is related to diversity is I would like to, I try to encourage people in this training class I develop I help them identify their brand, help them, I challenge themselves of, take a look at how people see you, or when the client is sitting there and there's 30 of you and they have a need, they're like, okay, I have this project I need. Oh, let me go ahead and grab Brenda, you know, or it's like, okay, well, let me grab John. No, don't get John because of he's not as quick, but Brenda, she's pretty quick. So I try to help people challenge themselves. But when it comes to diversity, I just want people to understand they need to add that to their brand, because this is what the world we live in. And so that is a strong attribute. So I just want to encourage people to, they need to add that to their brand about diversity, volunteer it as opposed to waiting to be asked.
Thank you. I'm looking at our time and we're like, man, we've got so much good stuff already. All right. So I'm glad that I asked those questions because I think that's perfect context for the first question we have from our viewers. So the first question we had was, if we are interested in knowing how well we're doing as an organization working towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, what steps would you recommend to make that determination? And I'm wondering, Bridget, if this doesn't fall directly into your diversity maturity matrix that you mentioned.
It does. Mm-hmm.
So maybe tell us a little bit more about that, or and in general, how you would assess how you're doing it towards diversity.
Okay, so yes, we do have what's called, we did create what's called a diversity maturity matrix. And pretty much what it does is it helps us understand where we stand as an organization. So we try to help identify the gaps. So it does fall into our pillars of representation, enablement, engagement, ecosystems of development. And so like we will challenge the units when they're creating their plan, like, okay, there's a number of things. We help them break out of where do you stand regarding, let's say, different diverse segments. Also break it out regarding your junior, your middle, your senior leaders as well. We also, we do measure them regarding pledges, like we mentioned before. We encourage regarding participation into the training sessions, and also are they encouraging regarding mentoring and coaching, because we do have various training programs for leadership development and helping them become multicultural managers. The other thing too is that we do have is about 5 levels. Like are you in the ad hoc phase? Are you in a responsive phase? Are you in a structured phase? Or the proactive phase, or the generative phase? So to be honest, as I've kind of been a bit transparent, we're in a responsive stage, to be honest. But we have broken out we have 12 business units. So we have broken that out to them. We gave them where they stand regarding women, regarding promotion, regarding the very diverse segments. And then we let them know, and then we give them a template of here's some activities of what you can do to try to push the needle to see we can kind of move them up, hopefully. And then we do give them the data. We provide the data to the leadership and to the officers and the business leaders of where they're at. Also, we do have a council. So we have all these meetings, and then we have the council. We have initiated the first meeting. So we're working on our second meeting, which is quarterly, when we have a monthly working meeting. So we have the U.S. Diversity Council. That's from the president all the way down to these diversity officers. The last meeting, I think we had over 60 members in that meeting. It was very historic for us. So anyway, that's pretty much about how we kind of go about regarding what we created called a diversity maturity matrix. So just basic accountability and for them to set goals and hopefully stay on the path, and hopefully keeps pushing them like, okay, now we're at structured. Now we want to get to proactive. We want to get to a point where it just becomes a way of life. It doesn't have to be I'm not going to say forced, but basically we're begging, hey, please encourage your people to attend. So
we're still at the begging stage, I think, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So because I'm making notes for us as much as anything else, your 5 levels were ad hoc, responsive, structured, proactive, and generative.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
Awesome. All right. Brenda, how would you look at talking about how well an organization is doing towards working towards DEI? How would you assess that? You're muted at the moment, Brenda.
Sorry, I had a question for Bridget. Did you guys internally create the diversity maturity model, or was that outsourced, a third party?
We created it.
Oh, okay. So speaking to that, there are third-party organizations that will help you with the diversity matrix. One is, this is a shameless plug, but the company's called Canaries. It was created by an INROADS alumni, but they do all of the data for you to with the diversity maturity level where you are. And so everything that Bridget said, there are companies that actually can help you with that if internally that's not the resources that you have available. I agree with everything she said. I've heard those terms over and over again. I like that you have things written down, you have people in place, you have accountability, and without that, nothing gets done. And so very similar. One example for us in INROADS is there was an organization that immediately, they made a statement like very many companies did, and then they actually created the action plan. And the action plan was very granular. We're going to get X number of interns from here. We're going to hire X number of full-time employees from this location, which was different than what they had been doing in the past. And so they added a different avenue to make sure that they were fulfilling that. And so it was kind of like their pledge across the organization. I'm assuming they revisit it from time to time, but so far we're a year and a half in, and I've seen them in relation to working with INROADS, I've seen them hold true to that particular action plan that I actually saw in writing. So without it being in writing and without a plan, nothing ever happens. It sounds great and everybody leaves the room feeling good, but without it being written down and accountability and people to actually follow it through to make it part of what they're responsible for, nothing gets done. And so, especially with us, because we have so many corporate partners, I can see the way that different companies have engaged, and those that made a statement to those that actually put it in action. The difference is night and day, that those who are really intentionally creating a diverse talent pipeline and making a difference down to how do you post your job descriptions? Are they gender neutral? So it won't, dissuade male or female one way or the other. And so studies have been done that certain language will make one person go after that and another person kind of shy away from that same position, doing the same responsibilities, both having the same skill set, but the way it was written will make someone kind of hold back. And so I've just seen job descriptions change to be a little bit more neutral and more inviting for all the diverse, however you define diversity, it is inviting for all of that. I've seen them kind of change the course of where they're finding the qualified talent and dispelling what the, what's the word? Dispelling, we've always done it this way. Let's keep doing that. And so let's make a difference. And so it really is a cultural company cultural shift to be able to think like that, to say we can still move forward in what we're doing, what our main course of business is, but hey, let's try it this way. We may be able to do it better. And studies have proven that that is absolutely true. More innovative, your bottom line has increased. So you definitely want to keep that, but definitely it's basic as writing it down and putting someone who is accountable and responsible over that, but very similar to what Bridget brought to the table.
If I can add to what Brenda's saying, and just triggered, is that, there's what we're trying to do also as well as regarding thinking outside the box. Our organization, to be honest, has been strictly 4-year degree. That's it. But what I'm excited about is almost like a farmer, and I'm loving seeing this garden grow ever since I, stepped in to this role and had team and people just jump in. People are just jumping in. But we've, like, for example, Empower. I love Empower. Empower is an awesome nonprofit organization. What they do is they retrain veterans and people unrepresented groups. I've been volunteering for years before I stepped into this role, and I have a volunteer opportunity where I can coach and stuff. So I love the organization. But anyway, we've been able to get approval because they don't have 4-year degrees. These are people who have changed their careers, and therefore now they have an IT certificate. So we're starting to recruit from there. We're also looking at what's called women who took a break, return to work. When we took a break. So we're looking at that pool as well. Of course, we have just started to, we're starting a pipeline regarding from veterans. To be honest, we're also just started up, we're into 2 years regarding HBCU relationship as well. So anyway, we are, from an organization, we are tapping into non-traditional or non-popular pipelines, to be honest, from our side as well. And then we're going to start looking into minority IT organizations, like Black Girls That Code or LGBTQ tech and things like that. So I just want to share that, we're starting to branch out into the most popular, hope to become popular, but yeah, definitely for recruitment and bringing more people in from non-traditional or most popular segments.
Excellent.
I have some groups for you, Bridget. I will share with you later so you can increase your pool.
Thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
of course, UTA is an HSI and an Asian and Pacific Islander serving university, so we fulfill some needs as well.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
We got training positions.
Yes. Okay, so let me jump back to our original questions here. I'm learning so much today. Thank you so much. So this one gets to some specifics of situations because we know some of our attendees are students. So this question's a little more how to, right? So as a specific example, how would you handle a situation where a colleague was being culturally insensitive, sexist, racist, homophobic, etc.? And as an interview question, you can think of that, but also just within your industry, within your work experience. How do you handle that kind of situation? You could imagine, saying to an interviewee, how would you handle a situation where a colleague's being culturally insensitive, sexist, racist, homophobic, etc.? So who would like to take a stab at that question?
I'm gonna go first in case Bridget steals my answer.
All right.
As you can imagine, that's probably a situation that we've all been in, right? Even as a student may have experienced this at some point in their life. And what do you do? And often because it is uncomfortable or it's not that we don't know that it's the wrong thing to say, but we're not sure if we're in a space either personally comfortable with standing up for the person that may have been offended, or you may have been the person offended, but because of the situation, whether the person who said it has some power of influence over you, you may think your job is at risk, or you may think, oh my gosh, what are they going to think of me if I respond back? And so something as simple, and I've been in this situation where I've been quiet because my first thought is probably not the most appropriate. I'm a person, I know myself well enough that I need to give myself 24 hours to think about something to respond appropriately, as to not to offend someone and not to be so abrasive or harsh. And maybe 24 hours is a little bit too long, but that's what works for me in 2022. So, but for a student or even an adult, something to kind of defuse the situation or make it less scary, or to, but you just want to bring notice to it. It's about the language that we use. And so a couple of phrases that I came up with were, I know you wouldn't have meant to offend, but, and kind of shed some light on that of maybe why what was said or the statement may have offended someone. Because a lot of times it's just lack of experiences or exposure to people that make statements that may be offensive. Or another statement could be, I don't think you realize how that came across. Let me share with you how that made me feel, or whoever you may be defending. So those may, again, back to the language to kind of bring it back down so it's not so emotionally charged. I'm an extremely emotional person, and so that's probably why I sit and think about it for a second before I say something, because my passion will definitely override the words I may be trying to use, which may happen for a lot of people. And so just those two statements may help bring it back down to make it more comfortable to address it, but definitely reaching out, speaking for those who don't have that voice, who don't have that confidence, who don't feel, because now you don't feel like, oh my God, my job is at risk. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be viewed or judged a certain way. So if you kind of diffuse it with those particular type of examples, it may help you in that. And so I didn't want Bridget to steal it from me, so I just wanted to get that out.
Honestly, I wanted Brenda to go first.
Thank you so much.
Because unfortunately mine is probably a little bit more harsh, because again, I've been in HR, not giving my age, a long time. So because I wanted her to speak first off of diversity, because my response honestly is like, okay, we have an investigation to start.
Oh, wow.
and so like I said, that's why I want her to speak first because the diversity thing, because I've been in HR a long time, so my brain is ready to snatch somebody and to like, okay, because someone's hurt. I'm like the mother hen. Someone's hurt. Let's do an investigation. And then I want to let them know, like, kind of put a little bit of scare them. This sounds terrible, but my HR part and investigation comes out first and then I want to make sure the person who felt impacted, if valid, feels safe. So those are my worries. I need to, make sure people are protected, et cetera. So I will admit, it starts off with that. The next thing that pops in my mind is that regarding, I try to see if I can gear the conversation to the person who caused harm. Is like put yourself in that person's shoes. So I like using scenarios like, okay, well, if you owned a company, how would this, et cetera, or et cetera. So I like trying to use that, flip it around and try to something they can relate to. So something can kind of click like, oh, I didn't realize that, or I didn't realize it. So they can understand this is a person. This is strictly a person. It's not about it's a person, a human being. So I try to go with that second step. And I will admit, around there's I'm probably startling them. I want them to, even though they may be on suspension or something, I just want them to think. So after I'm having that conversation, I want to leave them with something to just think, and with a little scare. I will admit, this is the HR part where they're not getting paid, they're on suspension or something like that. The investigation is pending, but it's like how your parent used to do, put you, you in timeout, and so you're like, you don't know what your mom's going to do. But let them marinate and think of some of the things that help them a perspective and challenge them thinking of their action, what it did to a human being, and how would you feel if that happened to you, type of deal. And then of course it'll lead to, having them, to be honest, complete some training. Like maybe it's anti-harassment training, pretty much, to be honest. So that's pretty much where I would go at, and I will admit, because I've just been in HR for so long, so it's kind of like just everybody safe, try to help the person understand where the perspective of how help them check themselves, and this, you're affecting another human being. How would you feel that happened to you? And then that's they close it with some training, and then hopefully, because I can't force a person to, you need to attend this ERG, you need to attend this, you need to attend the diversity class. I can't do that to the person because it's their prerogative. They're going to have to want to do that. And also, this sounds terrible. If they don't like the environment, they have freedom to leave. So sorry, it sounded kind of harsh, but it's that HR part of me came out. Mother hen, sorry.
That's okay. That's what we want. I mean, from the standpoint of our students, I think that's very helpful for them to think about it in the context of the work environment, and that there are consequences for the way we behave and the choices that we make about how we communicate with our colleagues. So the last question that we had started out with is another how-to question. So this is thinking about, as an employee, how do you advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, equality, social justice? What do you do as an employee? Because, many of our students are not going to be at your companies. What can they be doing at their companies when they get there to advocate for these things?
If I can just go, I think mine's is, what comes to mind is we have, yes, employer resource groups, but the key word we have on each one is and allies. And allies, and all 10 of them, and allies, Black African American and allies, LGBT and allies, caregivers group and allies. So I would just say is that because we allow for people welcome to join, and then therefore that's their way where they can, just choose to be a part and to maybe want to enjoy and learn more. And then there's subcommittees. We do have subcommittees. We have the recruitment subcommittee. We have the the development, leadership development, et cetera, CSR subcommittee. So basically I would just say is that I like to just encourage them regarding, hey, look at the ERGs and see if there's some place you would like to feel like you want to be a support member. You know, you don't have to be in the community, but there's allies. And of course, encouraging, we do have these Be Inspired series. So people, we always advertise to all the employees, dads that do, she says, so they're welcome to attend those. It's nice people do attend those and support those to hear their journeys and their stories, because everybody has a story. So that's just my brief answer.
Thank you. And Brenda, what would you say for a student? How would they advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So companies that are as large as where Bridget works have all of those things available to them. And then you have companies who are so much smaller that don't necessarily have all those avenues. And so one is it can start with you. If you see that there's an issue or that there's no advocacy group for that, you can actually start that by maybe starting with getting data. Seeing what across the board, all of the different diversity, just collect data on that if you could. Maybe just start with your group or team that you're working with and have those discussions and kind of come up with one thing you can do as a group. It could be participating with an outside organization, or it may be creating something inside. As simple as what Bridget was talking about, sharing your story. I know there's a company is it Google? It's a large company, or I can't remember who it is, but their thing is, it's the I story. And so everybody's able to share what their story is, because we all work better together when we understand what you've been impacted by, what your experiences are. And so you could really start with you, just like INROADS was created by one person's dream. And now it's an organization that places upwards of 900 interns across the US. And it started with 25 in one office in Chicago. So 50 years later, we are still doing that one person's dream. Became an organization, and his legacy, and his children are definitely still involved with the organization. And I was fortunate to meet Mr. Carr, the founder of the organization, when I was going through the training. And like Bridget, not trying to date myself, but those type of things. But it can start with you. I mean, my personal experiences, I was with an organization, had thousands of people. And I was just excited to be somewhere I went from a 30-person company up to 10,000 plus people. I was excited to be around other people because I get energy from people. But I saw some things we didn't have. We didn't have access to some other things, as well as they tried to make all of the amenities of coming to work to try to keep you there a little longer. They didn't have some things that I thought I was going to be the person to speak up for everybody. But I needed to have people that joined the cause. I needed to have buy-in from others to write a plan to try to get that enacted. And even while I was there, not that my plan went anywhere, everybody just agreed, oh, that's a great plan. That didn't go anywhere, but the company did get more of it, ERG, or business resource group at the time, just to add a different celebration. And so since I'm African American, that celebration at the time was to observe Martin Luther King holiday. And that seems so crazy in 2022, but this was back in the 90s where they weren't observing that. Every other cultural holiday was being culturally, ethnicity was being observed except that one. And so this group came to, and because I was known as somebody who was trying to get things started, I got invited to the group. But they did have to have buy-in from the leadership, someone to sign on to that effort. And ultimately, that did come to fruition, and then having additional celebrations. And so it can just start with you and where you are. It doesn't have to be a mountain. It could just be you, get one more person, add another person over the course of time until you have a committee that could write something that could make a change and be impactful. So that would be my process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we're almost out of time, we have 2 questions that have come up. Let me go ahead and pose them, and maybe you can hopefully briefly address them. So one question says, when companies start to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion and implement some kind of DEI related program for the first time, how does the work environment start to change? For example, do employees become more comfortable speaking about topics, or does it help with overall employee satisfaction or retention? How does the environment change when you start these programs?
Well, it's funny is that, yeah, we have started quite a bit of programs, and what I notice is that's when you notice people who want to come out and be supportive. It's almost like you're just giving them a whole new outfit or something like that. So it's conversation, communication basically is the number one, is really what it is. So if you just go ahead and plant that seed, you start watering and filtering and create those programs, and then all of a sudden people will start coming out. They can come out with as attendees, but they may come out as wanting to partner with you because it's something they believe in. So I would say that's pretty much I think how to go about it is that you start seeing people come out and be more supportive, and then word gets out. For example, communication with our organization is a challenge, but what we've decided to do, since we know, meaning that people don't check their work emails, is what I'm saying. What we decided to do in our vision from my department is that organic. So create programs that want to create organic growth. And we are seeing that where people have a word of mouth, and they're joining these diversity town halls we got and things like that. So
thank you. Brenda, did you want to add anything about environment once you start implementing DEI type programs?
Absolutely. I do agree. It does. It encourages people, like Bridget said, to come out of the woodwork. And if your organization actually doesn't have it, or you know something about it and you participate where you are, encourage your inner circle. I had friends who were at organizations that had ERG groups and BRG groups. And for those, that's employee resource groups or business resource groups, for those who don't know the acronym, but they were not involved prior to the pandemic. They were like, I don't know what they do. That's not for me. I don't have time. I got to work. And during the pandemic, I said, well, guess what? I mean, we talked a little bit more. I think we all reached out to our people, but I encouraged them to participate. And then they came back to thank me. Like, I didn't really know what it was about. I didn't know what it was going. I didn't want to join, but I thank you for encouraging me, because now I get to see it from a different perspective. So I mean, my organization is smaller, but I see the benefit of these across the board. And so I encourage those that are at organizations that have access to that, definitely do it and take part in that ally part. You don't have to be part of a group just because it doesn't fit your ethnicity or your issue. Go to the group to learn more about them. So if you're African American, go to the Latino Employee Resource Group to see how you can best support them or hear their stories and work better with them. Same thing for veterans or disability, whatever that is, because a lot of disabilities are not something we can see. And I think we all have a judgment or perception of, you don't have a disability, you know, you look like you have all your parts. And so that's kind of what we bring to the table, right? Our bias. But if you become an ally with those particular groups, you get to learn more about them in that informal setting. You know, you're still at work. You'll probably run across those people on a team situation or work on a project together. Like, oh, well, I met you at here. And so you're just increasing your network. So it is the communication and the network of it all, but you can be that person that advocates for those that have access to those groups and had a different or negative perception because maybe the company doesn't communicate as well, what those groups get a chance to do and actually have a voice at the table. And so that's what I kind of find myself doing for my peers or my friend circle. Be a part of that. If your company has it, I promise you it will pay off in the end. You'll get a little bit more exposure. In addition to, you'll increase your knowledge base as well.
And just can I add really quick is there's two other things too, I think might have been missed, but triggered off of what Brenda said, is that also you have to, your managers, you got to have a focus regarding your managers with an organization. That's an unconscious bias that has to be tackled. And that's with education and sensitization, or even having leaders be that face to speak about diversity, and then that starts trickling down because you're the role model, they're the role model, et cetera. And also try to look at your diversity within your leadership and your management, because they're the ones who can. I was just in a meeting yesterday, and it was someone who advised the same thing and saying, hey, start bringing diversity within there, because they're the ones who will help affect your supplier diversity regarding vendors. They're the ones who affect regarding hiring people. And so they're the example, because people leave, not companies, they leave managers. So I just want to add on that something we want to, I don't want to speak for Brenda, but definitely that management and leadership, that's the
Mhm.
portion that is equally important. I mean, we can do all this bottoms up, but
Mhm.
there's that unconscious bias, and those managers make a big difference.
Totally agree.
All right, we're actually over time, but I'm going to go ahead and address this, bring this last question up. So, last question, how can we address the topic of equity within an organization when the first response is often, oh, HR deals with it? And then very likely HR's response is, oh, well, it's confidentiality, so we can't really talk about it. So like, if you're concerned that your income rate is not the same as somebody else's, or you're concerned, well, we hosted a movie recently where lab space for women was only 2/3 of lab space for men. Obviously, we're an academic environment, right? So how do you start those things? How do you make those things happen instead of getting buried in, you know, an HR labyrinth in a sense? How do you bring them to the focus?
That's Bridget's area of expertise. So.
Dang it. Just kidding. But honestly, what keeps popping in my mind, it's the policies. You know, just starting to look at policies, and not only policies, but basic benefits department, your compensation department. So therefore, I just feel like the best thing to do is like basically sit down, maybe not as an employee, but I'm just thinking from an organization, sit down with your compensation department, start looking at pay parity, you know, see what's going on there. Start doing analysis regarding your various, the seniors, the middle, the juniors, et cetera, regarding gender, at least regarding the gender, and see what's going on there. Then look at your policy regarding benefits, you know, hey, regarding paid parental leave is only for the women, 13 paid, is not for the men. So just start, I would say those two is at least to get started, to look at that. It is, unfortunately, it is HR. I mean, you know, Brenda's right. I mean, it is HR, but it is not solely HR. It's got to be the leadership. It's got to be, it's even business leaders, you know, hey, I want to make sure that my employees are this and that and this and this. So it's the business leaders. This is actually, all this is part of, at least what I could say, is part of our council. It should be a part of your D&I council, I think, of every organization. So yes, even though you have supplier diversity there, you have recruitment there, but yes, that should be there as well. So I think it's a collective effort. It's not just HR. I mean, yes, they happen to be HR departments, but it's not HR to basically look at that and try to resolve it together.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to wrap up here. We have had Bridget Reeves with us from Tata Consultancy. She's the U.S. Culture and Diversity Engagement Lead, fairly new in that position, and thank you for joining us. And we had Brenda Williams, the University Relations Manager from INROADS, and students, pay attention. If you are looking for that kind of assistance that INROADS provides, go research them. They're a fantastic group. I've known about them for quite a while. So thank you both so much for your information and your views, telling us about your organizations and what you know about other groups. That's been very helpful. Helpful for me too as UTA, and looking at us as an organization too, because we're in this process as well. So we really appreciate your time for being with us today. Students, we have a few more brown bags left, going a little bit further through this month as we're traveling towards the end of the semester. You could tell today was a great opportunity. There are still remaining great opportunities in the virtual brown bag series. Please check out the schedule. Presenters, again, thank you so much for being with us today. Students, we hope you got something useful out of it, and faculty who are with us, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you again.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good